Morning, say your mom makes you coffee before you leave in the morning, and she's been doing it forever. And then one day, she's running late because her alarm clock didn't go off. So she's running late and she tells you, "Sorry, sweetie, I can't make the coffee today. I'm in a hurry." And she rushes off. And how do you explain that? She was running late. She was running late, but it means a heck of a lot more than that. It means a heck of a lot more than that. And if you kind of look at that stuff and just go, shrug our shoulders, well, surprise, surprise. You find a lot of times in life that people aren't what you thought they were. Well, it's not that people weren't what they were, it's that they're not what you thought they were, because you missed a bunch of signs along the way about little things, little changes in people. You missed the fact that on something like that, the mask cracked a little bit. And there's something that's missing that's there. Because once you do that the first time, then you're going to do that lots of times after that. It's like the first time you lie or the first time you cheat, probably very difficult. But after that, just becomes second nature. Like I was thinking of why is it that I had to change the test to B, C, D, and E? Why is it that somebody over here was writing answers to a test on the desk? And where does that come from? That you're so brazen, you just write the answer. You try to write the answers on a desk. And so the first time it happened, probably struggled with it, was afraid of getting caught, was nervous and everything. But after a while, it just becomes second nature. These little changes that are here and there. And that's why these things matter so much. Because we walk through life just shrugging our shoulders, going, no big deal, or it's probably nothing important. That's denial, man. Everything means something. Everything means something. Little changes in personality, little quirks, little things, these little cracks that we start finding, this is where big changes pile up from. So, he's talking here about becoming an individual. The idea is that very few of us actually are individuals. And that makes sense. It's not a criticism. Like, we tend to think of this as a criticism. Oh, you're just like you're a sheep. You're not an individual. Very, very few people are. Because what does it take to become an individual? Well, first off, to take seriously the things I was just talking about. The understanding that little things mean something. Little things add up to big things. If we look at ourselves and just think like, why do I dress like everybody? I don't dress like everybody else. Well, sure you do. You dress very similarly to lots of people of a generation. Doesn't mean anything. Oh yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. Now, that does not necessarily mean that if you do that, you're not an individual. Because you can dress like people of a generation, and it can just kind of mean that you're trying to fit in. It can mean that you don't know any other way than to do it, or it could just be because you like it. But oftentimes we'll just kind of dismiss all those other options and just say, I just like it. Yeah, okay, but why? Why do you like it though? Is it because it helps you to fit in? Is it because you actually find some kind of aesthetic pleasure in it? And then if there's the knee-jerk reaction, oh yeah, just aesthetically I like it. Okay, great. Explain aesthetically why you like it. Oh, you're thinking too much. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it's not that you're thinking too much. Maybe it's that other people think too little. That's the problem. And so if you find yourself as an individual, that means that you're separated out from the group. Why is that happening? Well, it might be because you're thinking more than everybody else. And other people aren't thinking enough, and then they think that you're thinking too much, and then you find yourself in a situation where you no longer fit in with the group. That's part of the price that you pay. In this case here, it's true that how do you become an individual? Well, it's a complete, not partial. We can't go one toe in and one toe out and go, can we be both? No. It's a complete, and it's fundamental. It's at the fundamental level. And it's eternal, it's forever. And it can't be overcome, this isolation. And it's this last part here, this insurmountable isolation that tips us off to something that Kaiser is getting at. That's deeper than just, to be an individual, you have to be isolated. I know, we get it by now. Yeah. What happens if you become an individual?
You're different from everybody else.
You're isolated, fundamentally, eternally, insurmountably. Because you can't go back. Once you've seen certain things, you can't go back from there. If you remember the allegory of the cave, once you've exited the cave, you can't go, and you've seen what the real world looks like, you really can't go back. I mean, you can, and then try to pretend like things aren't different from what they always had been before, but you're going to know that things are different. Remember the story about taking the helicopter over to Brazil and pulling the person out of the village and bringing him to San Diego, and then taking him back? You know, that person, you can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen before. You can't unexperience what you've experienced before. And so if you do become an individual, if you pursue that line, and becoming an individual is difficult, because you might think, like, I have to get rid of all other influences. That's impossible, because you have to start from where you are today, with all of your neuroses, all of your flaws, all of your experiences, all of your positivities as well. I'm sorry, all of your positive character traits as well. You have to start with where you are today. It's like, how do you solve a problem? Do you identify the problem and then find the person to blame? Who did this? You did this. All you're doing is you're delaying. You're not getting any closer to a solution when we do that. What you have to do instead is say, well, I guess we'll deal with this later, but let's solve the problem right now. And then oftentimes when you solve the problem right now, you find out that it's not nearly as important to find the person to blame after you've done that. You know, think about what it is we do, especially in American culture. We try to find the person to blame before we actually solve the problem. We're doing it at the same time. But it's counterproductive. So once you you have to begin with where you are to solve a problem. And you have to begin with where you are to become an individual, if it's something that you want. Remember from last time we were talking, there's a great deal of utility. There's a great deal of usefulness in being part of a large group. You know? And you give up something when you do that, and you also gain a lot. When you separate yourself from that group, then you gain a lot, but you also lose a lot. Remember last time we were talking, you lose security, you lose a sense of not being anxious. You have to be out there by yourself. That's a scary thing. You know, that's a scary thing. It's not necessarily something that's worth pursuing for most people. You've got to figure out for yourself if that's something that you want to pursue. But understand that if you do pursue this line, and you do kind of separate yourself out, and then you start to develop ideas, and it's not just a philosophy, it's a way of approaching life you start to develop. And then once you do that, well, gosh, it's so hard to go back, because now, I mean, imagine yourself, think about some of your friends, especially start thinking about some of your real dumbass friends. Maybe you are the dumbass friend. Start thinking about the real, and I'm talking about the jackasses, not the people who you're like, oh my God, I hate them. No, but just people who you're like, oh man, like, why would you pour glue on your eyelids just to see if you can open them? You know, people like that. And then start thinking about, you know, if you go off and you isolate yourself, and then you develop some ideas, and you develop yourself, and you come back, and then you try interacting with that person. You know, it's difficult. And it's a hard thing because you might not want to lose your friendship with that person. Now, you don't have to lose. In fact, if you really self-actualize, then you're going to be able to interact with the whole spectrum. You'll be able to interact with, no pun intended, you'll be able to interact with the person who glues their own eyelids shut just to see if they can. You'll be able to interact with, you know, whatever the teacher or the professor. You'll be able to interact with your other friends, by the way, who have also gone on that path. And what you're going to find is a lot of times you're going to draw those people to you because you're on a path. You're on this way. You know, iron sharpens iron. You become more of an individual, and so do they. And then you kind of become this way. But of course, be careful, because the danger is you're just joining another group if you do that. And then, of course, your thoughts dissipate. And that's the danger of joining a group. You're going to have to give up some of your own ideas, because, you know, you've got to stay a part of the group. Of course, the question was, we talked about last time, what are you willing to give up and compromise? So you're going to find this goes both ways. That to become that individual means isolation. You know, he goes pretty extreme with it. But it also means that if you become the individual, isolation is going to ensue from there as well. So it's worth considering which one you want to be, which one you want to do. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? All right, don't forget April 17th, which is going to collapse very quickly.